Maya Chen slipped through the corridors of the Pentagon's intelligence division like a ghost, quiet, competent, and deliberately unremarkable. At 35, she had mastered the art of being forgettable, keeping her head down and her voice soft. Her tailored pantsuits were always in muted colors, her straight black hair pulled back in a practical bun, and her dark eyes rarely met anyone's gaze directly. Behind her back, the other analysts called her the quota hire or diversity points, though she was arguably the most qualified person in the room. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Maya was a data analyst hired 11 months ago to process intelligence reports from Southeast Asia. She handled the endless stream of satellite imagery, field agent reports, and communications intercepts with methodical efficiency. Maya analyzed patterns that others missed, connected dots across seemingly unrelated events, and turned raw data into actionable intelligence. She did it all with the kind of quiet precision that made people forget she was even there, which was exactly how she preferred it. Every morning at 5:30 a.m., Maya arrived at her workstation before anyone else. She'd review overnight reports, organize her workflow, and prepare briefing documents with meticulous care. The intelligence division operated with controlled urgency. Analysts hunched over secure terminals, team leaders conducting hushed meetings, the constant hum of information being processed and disseminated. Maya worked through it all with methodical efficiency, a small figure in dark clothing who seemed to anticipate every request before it was made. The colleagues who bothered to notice her at all saw what they expected to see, a diversity hire, brought in to meet some quota, useful for translating the occasional document but otherwise unremarkable. Some were professional enough, nodding when they passed her in the hallways. Others treated her like furniture, invisible unless needed. A few, like Deputy Director Richard Mercer, seemed to take pleasure in reminding her of her perceived place in the division's hierarchy. "Here comes our token Asian," Mercer would say when Maya delivered her analysis reports, his voice carrying just enough for nearby analysts to hear. "Let's see what the Affirmative Action Committee sent us today." Maya never responded to the comments. She'd learned long ago that some battles weren't worth fighting, especially when you had bigger secrets to protect. She'd submit her reports, answer any clarifying questions, and return to her desk where she'd spend lunch breaks alone reviewing satellite imagery while eating food she brought from home. What none of them knew, what none of them could have guessed, was that Maya Chen was the daughter of General Michael Chen, former head of Pacific Command and one of the most decorated military intelligence officers in recent history. Her mother had been Elizabeth Harlow, a legendary CIA field operative whose work during the Cold War was still classified at the highest levels. Military and intelligence circles still discussed her parents' joint operation in North Korea as a textbook example of perfect execution under impossible conditions. Maya wore her father's platinum signet ring every day, converted into a simple pendant hidden beneath her blouse. She'd inherited more than just jewelry when her parents died in a suspicious plane crash 5 years ago. She'd inherited decades of training, instincts honed through a childhood spent on military bases around the world, and analytical skills that could detect patterns invisible to others. But she'd also inherited her parents' caution, their awareness that knowledge was power, and power made you a target. After her parents' funeral, Maya had left her position at the Defense Intelligence Agency, where she'd been a rising star, following in her father's footsteps. 8 years of intelligence work, 2 overseas postings in Singapore and Seoul, numerous commendations for analytical excellence. All of it felt hollow without her parents to guide her. She'd tried private sector work for a while, but corporate intelligence felt too removed from national service, too focused on profit rather than protection. The Pentagon analyst position was perfect. Intelligence work, but without the spotlight. She could serve her country while investigating her suspicions about her parents' death. The official report called it a mechanical failure, but Maya had found inconsistencies that suggested otherwise. She needed access to classified databases, time to search for connections, and most importantly, anonymity while she did it. The irony wasn't lost on her that she'd ended up back where she started, surrounded by intelligence officers who saw her as nothing more than a diversity hire. But anonymity had its advantages. Nobody asked probing questions about her background. Nobody expected her to be anything more than competent at basic analysis. Nobody suspected that the quiet woman compiling threat assessments could break into secure databases that were theoretically impossible to access. Maya's small apartment in Arlington reflected her carefully cultivated ordinary life. Intelligence textbooks, a few photographs of her parents in formal settings, and hidden behind a false wall in her closet, a secure laptop containing everything she'd discovered about the circumstances surrounding their death. She maintained this parallel investigation religiously, but the trail had gone cold. Or so she thought. The first sign that her carefully constructed piece was about to shatter came on a Wednesday morning during the Southeast Asia regional briefing. Colonel James Walker, the division chief, was reviewing threats across the region when he paused at an intelligence gap regarding Chinese naval movements near the Philippines. "We're blind in the South China Sea," Walker said, frustration evident in his voice. "Their new electronic countermeasures are blocking our satellite surveillance, and we have no human assets in position to report." Time seemed to slow as Maya processed this information, her parents' training kicking in automatically. Threat assessment, strategic analysis, historical patterns. She recognized the Chinese tactics immediately. They mirrored a classified operation her father had once countered, using a network of fishing vessels equipped with passive monitoring equipment. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Maya was speaking before she could stop herself. "Sir, this resembles the Coral Shadow tactics from 2007. If they're following the same playbook, we could deploy passive acoustic monitoring through the Philippine fishing fleet operating in those waters." The room fell silent. All eyes turned toward Maya, who rarely spoke in briefings unless directly addressed. Colonel Walker stared at her with narrowed eyes. "Coral Shadow is a classified operation. How would you know about it?" Maya realized her mistake immediately. Coral Shadow had been her father's operation, never publicly disclosed and restricted to the highest security clearances. I read about similar tactics in historical analyses of naval intelligence operations," she said, trying to recover. "The principle of using civilian vessels for passive monitoring is documented in several declassified reports." Walker seemed satisfied with her explanation, but Deputy Director Mercer was watching her with new suspicion. The meeting continued, but something had shifted. Maya had revealed a crack in her carefully constructed facade, and cracks had a way of widening under pressure. As she sat alone at her desk that evening, checking a secure message board where former colleagues occasionally left coded information about her parents' case, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that her peaceful anonymity was living on borrowed time. She was right. The comment started small. Know-it-all became Mercer's favorite name for Maya, delivered with just enough contempt to make nearby analysts uncomfortable, but not enough to be officially inappropriate. He'd use it when requesting reports, when passing in the hallway, whenever he wanted to remind her and everyone else that he didn't appreciate being shown up by someone he considered beneath him. Maya tried to ignore it, but Mercer had a talent for timing. He'd make his comments when she was presenting analysis to senior officials, turning moments of professional competence into something that felt embarrassing and presumptuous. Other analysts began to notice the tension, and Maya could feel the shift in how they looked at her. "Must be nice," Mercer said one afternoon as Maya finished presenting her assessment of a potential threat in Malaysia, "having all the answers when you've never been in the field." The senior officials glanced between them, sensing the undercurrent but not understanding it. Maya handed out her report summaries without responding to Mercer's comment. But something cold settled in her chest. If only he knew. The breaking point came during a particularly intense week, when multiple threats across the region required rapid analysis and response. Maya had been working 16-hour days, barely stopping to eat, handling everything from satellite imagery analysis to signals intelligence decryption. She was exhausted but meticulous, precise but invisible, exactly as she'd trained herself to be. On Friday evening, as she was compiling a comprehensive threat assessment for the weekend shift, General Robert Harrington, the Joint Chiefs liaison, stopped by her desk. Maya had rarely interacted with someone at his level, but had observed him enough to know he was brilliant, fair-minded, and respected throughout the intelligence community. "Ms. Chen," he said, and Maya looked up from her monitor. "I wanted to thank you personally for your work this week. The analysis reports I've been reading are exceptional. Complex pattern recognition, predictive threat assessment, historical contextualization. The Joint Chiefs specifically mentioned the quality of intelligence coming from this division recently." Maya felt a flutter of something she hadn't experienced in months. Professional pride. "Thank you, sir. I'm just doing my job." "You're doing it exceptionally well," Harrington replied. "I'd like to discuss expanding your role here." Maybe bringing you into some special projects. You clearly have the analytical skills for it." After Harrington left, Maya allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. Maybe her careful competence was paying off. Maybe she could build a career here, find stability, and continue her private investigation with even greater access. The moment lasted exactly until Monday morning, when she discovered what Mercer had been up to. "Heard you got a little praise from General Harrington," Mercer said, cornering her in the break room. Must have been a slow week for him to notice the help. Maya tried to step around him, but Mercer blocked her path. "You know what I think? I think you're getting a little too comfortable here. Starting to forget your place. I'm just doing my job, Deputy Director. Your job is to process basic intelligence and translate when needed. Your job is not to show off in briefings, not to offer strategic suggestions, and definitely not to make the rest of us look bad with your little performances." Maya met his eyes for the first time in months. Performances? All that showing off with your analysis. Like you're some kind of intelligence prodigy instead of just another diversity hire who got lucky with a few good calls. Mercer stepped closer, using his height to intimidate. "I've been asking around about you, Miss Chen. Funny thing, nobody seems to know much about your background. No intelligence community connections, no special training, just some mysterious private sector experience. You keep vague." Maya's hands went still on her coffee cup. Mercer had been investigating her background. How much had he found? How much was there to find? Her parents had been careful to keep her out of official records, training her privately while creating a paper trail that looked ordinary. "Makes a guy wonder," Mercer continued, "what you're hiding, what you're running from. Because people don't just show up at the Pentagon with convenient analytical skills and no proper background. My credentials were verified during the hiring process. Basic credentials, sure, but I'm talking about the real story. The one you don't want to tell." Mercer smiled, and it wasn't pleasant. "Don't worry, I'll figure it out. And when I do, we'll see how impressed General Harrington is with his star analyst." After Mercer left, Maya stood alone in the break room, her hands shaking for the first time since the coral shadows slip. She'd been so careful, so thorough in creating her new identity. Her connection to her parents was buried in classified files that required the highest clearance to access. But Mercer was persistent, and if he kept digging... That night, Maya sat in her apartment, her secure laptop open for the first time in weeks. She wasn't planning anything, just checking whether her digital safeguards were still in place, whether anyone had been probing her background through official channels. The laptop showed no alerts, no unauthorized searches. But Mercer's investigation, his increasing hostility, the way other analysts were starting to look at her with suspicion rather than indifference, it was all building towards something Maya couldn't control from her position of artificial weakness. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Enjoyed our conversation today. Looking forward to learning more about your real background. Sleep tight, Miss Chen." Mercer had her personal phone number. He was escalating beyond workplace harassment into something more personal, more threatening. Maya stared at the message, then at the secure laptop, then at the photo on her bookshelf showing her parents at her college graduation. Her father in his general's uniform, her mother elegant and watchful as always. "What would you do?" she whispered to the empty apartment. The answer came to her in her father's voice, clear as if he were sitting beside her. "Sometimes, Maya, the best defense is to show them exactly who they're fighting." Maya closed the laptop and made her decision. She'd given anonymity a chance, tried to honor her parents' memory through quiet service rather than confrontation. But Mercer had made it clear that peace wasn't an option. He wanted to know who she really was. Maybe it was time to show him. Mercer's campaign against Maya intensified over the next 2 weeks. He'd found allies among the senior analysts, people who resented her growing reputation for analytical excellence, who viewed her as an outsider who hadn't paid her dues. They'd make comments about quota hires and diversity points, just loud enough for Maya to hear. They'd question her assessments, second-guess her analysis, and create an atmosphere of doubt around everything she did. Maya endured it all with the same quiet professionalism she'd maintained for months, but inside she was making preparations. She began documenting everything: times, dates, witnesses, exact quotes. Her father had taught her that intelligence gathering was as important as analysis, and Mercer was giving her plenty of ammunition. The harassment took a more serious turn when Maya arrived at work one morning to find her computer accessed overnight, her carefully organized files opened and searched. Nothing was missing. Mercer wouldn't risk removing classified documents, but the message was clear. Nowhere was safe, not even her secure workstation. Maya photographed everything before logging in, adding the evidence to the file she was building. Mercer had escalated from harassment to security violations, probably thinking he could intimidate her into quitting. He had no idea he was hunting someone who'd been trained by legends. That afternoon, Colonel Walker stopped by her desk. Walker was old-school intelligence, a 25-year veteran who'd earned his position through proven analytical abilities and sound judgment. He was respected throughout the division, and his opinion carried weight with the senior leadership. "Ms. Chen," Walker said, his voice carefully neutral, "I wanted to ask you about something. I've been hearing rumors, questions about your qualifications, your background. Wanted to give you a chance to address them directly." Maya looked up from her monitor, meeting Walker's eyes. "What kind of questions?" "The kind that suggest maybe you're not who you say you are. Maybe you're hiding something that could be relevant to your security clearance." Walker sat down, his expression serious. "I've been watching you work for months. Your analytical skills are exceptional, your pattern recognition is better than some analysts I've known for 20 years, and you handle classified information with perfect protocol. But Deputy Director Mercer has raised some concerns about your background checks." "What specifically is he claiming?" "He's suggesting that your employment history might be incomplete, that there are gaps that weren't properly investigated during your security clearance process." Walker leaned forward. "He's also suggesting that General Harrington might be interested in reviewing your file more carefully." Maya felt something cold settle in her stomach. Mercer was going after her security clearance now, trying to create enough doubt to force a deeper background investigation. If they started digging into her history, her connection to her parents might be discovered, and her private investigation into their deaths would be compromised. "Deputy Director Mercer seems to have a lot of opinions about my qualifications," Maya said carefully. "He does. And he's been sharing them with anyone who'll listen." Walker studied her face. "The thing is, I've been around long enough to recognize certain qualities in people. The way you analyze information, the way you process complex data sets, the way you identify patterns that others miss. You remind me of intelligence officers I've worked with at much higher levels." Maya's hands went still on her keyboard. Walker was fishing, but he was also observant. How much had he noticed? How much had he guessed? "I think," Walker continued, "that whatever Mercer thinks he's uncovered, he might not understand the full picture. And I think he might be making a mistake by pushing this issue." "What are you saying, Colonel?" "I'm saying that if you have a story to tell, it might be better to tell it on your own terms rather than let Mercer control the narrative." Walker stood up. "I'm saying that if Mercer is hunting something he doesn't understand, he might find more than he bargained for." After Walker left, Maya sat alone at her workstation, staring at her father's ring now hanging visibly outside her blouse. In 20 minutes, the afternoon intelligence briefing would begin, and she'd be back to handling the endless stream of threat assessments that made up her official duties. But underneath the routine, war was being declared. Mercer wanted to know who she really was? Fine. But he was about to learn that some secrets were kept for everyone's protection, not just hers. That evening, Maya made a phone call to a number she hadn't used in 5 years. It was answered on the first ring. "Secure line," came the terse response. "This is Nightingale," Maya said, using the code name her mother had given her years ago. "I need to speak with Admiral Hayes. Authorization code Victor Echo 9-47. A pause. Nightingale. Authentication confirmed. Stand by for Admiral Hayes." Several moments passed before a gruff voice came on the line. "Chen? Is that really you?" "Yes, sir. It's been a while. 5 years, 2 months, not since the funeral." "What's happening?" Maya explained about Mercer, about his investigation, about the escalating harassment. Hayes listened without interrupting, occasionally asking for clarification on dates and specifics. "So you're asking me to confirm your background if necessary?" I'm asking you to be ready to confirm certain aspects of my background if it becomes necessary. Someone's digging into my history, and I'd rather control how the information comes out than let them stumble onto it accidentally, especially given what I'm still investigating privately. Understood. I'll make sure key people are prepared to respond appropriately if contacted. Hayes paused. And Chen? Your parents would be proud of how you've handled this so far. But if push comes to shove, don't let them forget whose daughter you are. Maya hung up the phone and looked at the photograph of her parents. She'd spent 5 years running from who she was, trying to honor her parents' memory through quiet service instead of confrontation. But Mercer had made it clear that running wasn't an option anymore. Time to stop being the invisible analyst and remind everyone why Michael Chen had been called the strategist and Elizabeth Harlow had been known as the ghost. The hunt was about to become a war, and Maya had been trained by 2 of the best intelligence operators the country had ever produced. Mercer had no idea what he'd awakened. The mandatory security clearance review came with 3 days' notice. Every intelligence division employee, from senior directors to support staff, was required to undergo a comprehensive background check renewal. Maya read the memo carefully, understanding immediately that this wasn't routine scheduling. Mercer had arranged this, probably convinced General Harrington that security protocols needed tightening after some manufactured concern about information leaks. Going to be interesting, she heard Mercer tell another deputy director as she passed in the hallway. See who's been telling the truth about their qualifications. Maya spent the 3 days preparing, but not in the way Mercer expected. She contacted Admiral Hayes again, spoke with 3 former colleagues from her DIA days, and arranged for certain parts of her classified background to be accessible through official channels. Her father had taught her that every confrontation was won or lost in the preparation phase. This wouldn't be a defense of her credentials. It would be a revelation. The night before the review, Maya sat in her apartment with her secure laptop open, accessing files on her parents' last mission that she'd carefully encrypted. She reviewed each document with methodical precision, looking for connections she might have missed, patterns that could explain why a decorated general and a legendary operative had died in what was officially ruled an accident. Precision with purpose, she whispered, repeating one of her father's favorite phrases. Tomorrow would require both. Review day dawned gray and rainy, with a heaviness that matched the mood in the intelligence division. Maya arrived early, before the other analysts, and found Colonel Walker reviewing files at his desk. "Morning, Miss Chan," Walker said, not looking up from his monitor. "Ready for today?" "As ready as I can be." Walker glanced at a personnel file on his screen, then at Maya. "Interesting background review came across my desk this morning. Thought you might want to know that someone with considerable authority requested it." Maya studied Walker's expression, noting the subtle hint. "Someone concerned about security?" "Someone interested in the truth, I'd say." Walker met her eyes. "Sometimes the most secure information isn't what's hidden, but what's hiding in plain sight." Maya understood. Walker had seen something in her file, something that contradicted the narrative Mercer was pushing. "I'll keep that in mind." The review began at 9 a.m. with a division-wide meeting. Deputy Director Mercer stood at the front of the conference room, flanked by 2 security officers. "This is a standard procedure," Mercer announced, though his eyes lingered on Maya. "In light of recent intelligence breaches in other departments, we're conducting comprehensive verification of all personnel. Everyone will meet individually with the security team to review and confirm their background information." Maya watched Mercer carefully, noting his confidence, the slight smile that suggested he believed he had her cornered. She remained expressionless, the training from both parents kicking in automatically. Never reveal your position until you're ready to strike. Analysts were called alphabetically, each disappearing into a conference room for 30 minutes to an hour. Maya used the time to continue her work, analyzing threat reports with the same methodical precision she always displayed. Inside, however, she was preparing for battle, mentally reviewing the strategy she had developed over the past 3 days. "Chen, Maya," called one of the security officers shortly before noon. Maya gathered her identification badge and security tokens, then followed the officer to the conference room. Inside, Mercer sat beside the head security officer, a folder open before him. The smug look on his face, told Maya everything she needed to know about his expectations for this meeting. "Ms. Chen," the security officer began professionally, "this is a routine verification of your background information. We'll be comparing your original application materials with current database records to ensure consistency." Maya nodded, keeping her expression neutral. "Let's begin with your educational background," the officer continued. "You listed a bachelor's in international relations from Georgetown and a master's in data analytics from MIT. "That's correct," Maya confirmed. The officer checked something off. "Both verified through university records." Mercer shifted slightly, his confidence wavering. "Your employment history shows 5 years at Pacific Shield Analytics before joining us." "Yes. We've confirmed your position there." The officer glanced at Mercer, then back at Maya. "However, Deputy Director Mercer has raised concerns about gaps in your employment history and possible undisclosed government connections." Here it was, the trap Mercer thought he'd set. "Miss Chen," Mercer leaned forward, "your analytical skills and knowledge of classified operations suggest previous government experience that isn't reflected in your file. Failure to disclose such experience would constitute a serious security violation." Maya met his gaze steadily. "I've disclosed all required information according to security protocols." "Then perhaps you'd like to explain how you knew about Operation Coral Shadow, a classified intelligence operation that isn't accessible to analysts at your level." Mercer's voice carried the triumph of someone who believed they'd cornered their prey. The security officer looked confused. "What's Operation Coral Shadow?" "A highly classified naval intelligence operation from 2007, Mercer explained. "Miss Chen referenced it in a briefing last month, despite having no authorized access to that information." Maya remained calm, the moment of decision upon her. She could continue the charade, try to explain away her knowledge with some plausible story. Or she could reveal enough of her background to neutralize Mercer's threat without compromising her ongoing investigation. "I believe there's been a misunderstanding," Maya said carefully. "My security clearance allows access to that information." Mercer's smile widened. "Your current clearance doesn't. That's the point." "My current and previous clearances do," Maya corrected. She turned to the security officer. "Could you please check authorization code Sierra Hotel 9-73 in the classified personnel database?" The security officer looked surprised but entered the code into his secure terminal. His eyes widened as he read the screen. "This is unexpected," he said slowly. "According to this, Ms. Chen previously held a top-secret/SCI clearance with special access designations during an unspecified government assignment." Mercer's smile faded. "That's impossible. Her background shows private sector work. Pacific Shield Analytics is a documented cover for certain DIA operations," the security officer read from his screen. "Ms. Chen's service there is verified by Admiral Jonathan Hayes, Director of Naval Intelligence." The room fell silent. Maya kept her expression neutral, but inside she felt a grim satisfaction. Mercer had wanted to expose her? Fine. But he would only see what she wanted him to see. "There must be some mistake," Mercer insisted, reaching for the terminal. "There's no mistake," came a new voice from the doorway. General Robert Harrington stood there, his 4 stars gleaming on his uniform. "Ms. Chen's background has been verified at the highest levels." Mercer stood immediately, his face flushing. "General, I was just conducting a security review as directed." "The security review you initiated based on personal grievances rather than legitimate concerns," Harrington corrected, stepping into the room. "Colonel Walker brought your behavior to my attention. Harassment, intimidation, unauthorized access to Ms. Chen's workstation, all documented thoroughly." Maya watched the confrontation with outward calm, though her pulse quickened. Harrington's involvement was unexpected. Walker must have taken her documentation directly to him. "Sir, I was acting out of concern for departmental security," Mercer protested. "Were you?" Harrington asked coldly. "Then perhaps you can explain why you accessed Ms. Chen's computer after hours without authorization? Or why you've been investigating her background outside official channels?" Mercer had no answer. "Ms. Chen has been conducting valuable intelligence work while enduring a campaign of harassment," Harrington continued. "Work that has provided critical insights into numerous regional threats. Work that continues a family tradition of exceptional service. Maya felt a jolt of surprise. How much did Harrington know about her parents? Family tradition? Mercer repeated, looking confused. Harrington glanced at Maya, a question in his eyes. She gave him a slight nod, knowing that partial disclosure was now inevitable. Ms. Chen is the daughter of General Michael Chen and Elizabeth Harlow Chen, Harrington said quietly. Two of the finest intelligence officers I have ever had the privilege of working with. The security officer's eyes widened in recognition. Even Mercer looked stunned. The strategist and the ghost. The security officer whispered. They're your parents? Maya nodded once, maintaining her composure, though it felt as if the carefully constructed walls around her identity were crumbling. That's impossible, Mercer said, but with far less conviction. Their daughter would have been fast-tracked to senior positions, not working as a basic analyst. Unless she chose a different path, Harrington suggested. Unless she wanted to serve without leveraging her family name. Maya met Mercer's gaze steadily. I disclosed everything required by security protocols. My parentage wasn't relevant to my position. Wasn't relevant? Mercer's voice rose in disbelief. You're the daughter of two intelligence legends, and you didn't think that was relevant? What was relevant was my ability to do the job, Maya replied evenly. Which I've done exceptionally well, despite your persistent attempts to undermine me. Harrington turned to the security officer. This review is concluded. Ms. Chen's clearance and position are confirmed. He looked at Mercer. Deputy Director, report to my office in 1 hour. After they left, Maya sat alone in the conference room, the weight of partial revelation settling around her. She'd exposed enough of her background to neutralize Mercer's threat, but at what cost? The anonymity she'd carefully maintained was compromised. Questions would follow, a tension she'd been avoiding for 5 years. Her phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Well played, Nightingale. Admiral Hayes sends regards. Maya allowed herself a small smile. The first battle was won, but the war was just beginning. Mercer had been neutralized, but the larger question remained. What had happened to her parents, and who was responsible? With her cover partially blown, she would need to accelerate her investigation. Word spread through the intelligence division by the end of the day. The quiet analyst in the corner wasn't just good at her job. She was intelligence royalty, daughter of the legendary team whose exploits were still studied at the farm in West Point. Maya found herself in an impossible position. The anonymity she'd carefully constructed was gone, but the attention that replaced it was almost worse. Analysts who'd ignored her for months now sought her out, asking about her parents, wanting to know if the stories about them were true. Senior officials who'd barely acknowledged her existence suddenly found reasons to consult her on various intelligence matters. She had become visible in exactly the way she'd been trying to avoid. Mercer had disappeared after his meeting with Harrington, but Maya knew better than to consider him defeated. Men like him didn't accept humiliation gracefully, especially when that humiliation was as public and complete as what had happened in the security review. She was right to be concerned. The next morning, Maya received a summons to General Harrington's office. She arrived precisely on time, unsure whether she was about to be promoted or terminated. Harrington was behind his desk, her personnel file open before him, his expression unreadable. Sit down, Miss Chen, Harrington said. Or should I call you Nightingale? Maya felt a surge of adrenaline. Nightingale had been her operational code name during her brief time working with her mother at the CIA. It wasn't in any official Pentagon records. Maya is fine, sir. Is it? Harrington leaned back in his chair. Because according to what I've been learning since yesterday, you're one of the most qualified intelligence analysts to ever serve in this division, with specialized training in counterintelligence and data pattern recognition that makes our senior analysts look like amateurs. And you've been hiding it for 11 months. Maya met his gaze steadily. I wasn't hiding anything, sir. I was trying to serve without drawing attention to my background. By working as a basic analyst instead of using your actual qualifications? By enduring Mercer's harassment rather than using your considerable connections to shut it down immediately? Harrington studied her. Why? Maya considered her options carefully. Harrington clearly knew more than she'd expected. Partial truth might be the best approach. After my parents died, I needed distance from the intelligence community. Too many memories, too many expectations. The analyst position let me serve my country while maintaining a lower profile. And Deputy Director Mercer's harassment? Mercer was a challenge I could handle. Revealing my background to stop him would have created exactly the situation I now find myself in, being seen as Michael and Elizabeth's daughter rather than as Maya Chin. Harrington closed her file. That's part of it, but not all of it. Maya remained silent. Walker told me about the security breaches on your workstation, Harrington continued. What Mercer didn't know was that our cybersecurity team logs all after-hours access. They reported his intrusion immediately. What they also reported was that you've been accessing databases related to your parents' last mission. Databases that even I need special authorization to view. Maya's heart raced, but her expression remained composed. Sir, I can explain. You don't believe it was an accident, Harrington interrupted. The plane crash. You think someone arranged it. It wasn't a question. Maya had spent 5 years investigating in secret, and Harrington had deduced her purpose in minutes. I have questions about the official report, she acknowledged carefully. So do I, Harrington said quietly. Maya stared at him, momentarily speechless. Your parents were my friends, Maya. Michael was my mentor when I was a young intelligence officer. Elizabeth saved my life in Beirut. I attended their wedding. I was at your high school graduation. Harrington's voice carried an emotional weight she hadn't heard before. When they died, the investigation was rushed, conclusive, despite inconsistent evidence. I raised concerns but was told to stand down. When you appeared in my division 11 months ago, I suspected you might be here for more than just a fresh start. You knew who I was from the beginning, Maya realized. I knew. But I respected your desire for anonymity. I watched you work, saw how you analyzed information, recognized your parents in everything you did. I kept my distance, let you establish yourself on your own terms. Until Mercer forced the issue. Until Mercer forced the issue, Harrington agreed. Now we have a decision to make. We? Your cover is partially blown. Mercer has been reassigned effective immediately, but the division knows who your parents were. They don't know what you're investigating, but your anonymity is compromised. The question is what comes next. Maya felt a complex mix of emotions, relief at finding a potential ally, wariness about trusting anyone with her suspicions, determination to continue her investigation with or without official sanction. I want to know what happened to my parents, she said simply. Harrington nodded. So do I. But we need to be strategic. If someone did arrange their deaths, they were powerful enough to cover it up at the highest levels. Moving openly now could alert them. What do you suggest? I'm offering you a promotion, Harrington said, Special Advisor on Southeast Asian Intelligence. You'll have expanded access, increased authority, and the ability to direct certain intelligence-gathering operations. Officially, you'll be using your linguistic skills and regional expertise to enhance our threat assessments. Unofficially, you'll have the resources to continue your investigation with my protection. It was everything Maya had been working toward: access, authority, resources. But it would also put her in the spotlight, make her more visible to whoever might have targeted her parents. Your father always said that sometimes the safest place to hide is in plain sight, Harrington added, as if reading her thoughts. The best cover isn't invisibility. It's a plausible alternative purpose. Maya thought of her father's strategic brilliance, her mother's ability to operate under deep cover for years. What would they advise? Stay hidden and safe, or step into the light to draw out their enemies? I accept the position, Maya said finally, but I need complete operational autonomy. No reporting requirements, except directly to you. Agreed, Harrington said without hesitation. There's one more thing you should know. Admiral Hayes contacted me after your security review. He believes there's been renewed activity concerning an operation your parents were involved with just before their deaths. Something called Jade Serpent. Maya felt a chill. Jade Serpent had been her father's last mission, a counterintelligence operation targeting a network of high-level moles within the U.S. intelligence community. It had been officially listed as inconclusive in his final report, submitted just days before the crash. That changes the timeline. she said, her analytical mind already processing the implications. If there's renewed activity, it means the original operation wasn't completed. And if it wasn't completed, then whatever your parents discovered might still be a threat, Harrington finished. Which means their deaths might not have been about silencing them, but about preventing them from exposing someone. Maya nodded, the pieces starting to align in her mind. I'll need access to all Jade Serpent files. Already arranged. Your new security credentials will be active by end of day. Harrington stood. Maya, if we're right about this, we're dealing with a traitor at the highest levels of intelligence, someone who's been embedded for years, someone powerful enough to arrange the deaths of two of our best and make it look like an accident. I know, Maya said quietly. That's why I've spent 5 years preparing for this moment. As she left Harrington's office, Maya felt a strange sense of liberation. After years of hiding, of playing the invisible analyst, she could finally bring her full abilities to bear on the mystery that had consumed her since her parents' deaths. The path ahead was dangerous, filled with unknown enemies and uncertain alliances, but for the first time in years, she wasn't walking it alone. Her phone buzzed with another message from the secure number. Nightingale operational. Assets in position. The hunt begins. Maya smiled grimly. Mercer had wanted to know who she really was. He'd gotten a glimpse, but only a glimpse. The daughter of the strategist and the ghost was about to show the intelligence community exactly what she was capable of. And somewhere, watching from the shadows, her parents' killer would soon realize their biggest mistake. They should have killed her too. Maya's new position as special advisor came with an office, a small team of dedicated analysts, and the kind of security clearance that opened doors throughout the intelligence community. Her first official day started with a division-wide briefing, where General Harrington personally introduced her new role. Ms. Chen brings unique expertise to our Southeast Asia operations, Harrington told the assembled analysts. Her linguistic skills, cultural knowledge, and analytical abilities will enhance our understanding of emerging threats in the region. Maya stood beside him, dressed in a sharper suit than her usual attire, her posture reflecting a quiet confidence she no longer needed to hide. The room's reaction was a mix of respect, curiosity, and in some cases, thinly veiled resentment. The diversity hire narrative had been shattered overnight, replaced by whispers about her legendary parents and speculation about her own capabilities. I look forward to working with all of you, Maya said simply when Harrington gave her the floor. My door is always open for collaboration. The transformation was immediate and jarring. Analysts who had previously ignored her now sought her input on their projects. Senior officials who'd barely acknowledged her existence invited her to high-level meetings. Everyone wanted to know if the stories about her parents were true. Had her father really predicted the North Korean missile crisis 3 months before it happened? Had her mother really extracted 3 assets from Beijing during the Olympic lockdown? Maya deflected these questions with practiced ease, redirecting conversations to current intelligence matters. She had not stepped into the light to become a curiosity or to trade on her parents' reputation. She had a mission, and every interaction was now evaluated through that lens. Did it advance her investigation or distract from it? Behind the scenes, Maya was meticulously constructing her operation. She hand-selected 3 analysts from the division for her team, not the most senior or decorated, but those whose work showed genuine analytical talent and integrity. She established secure communication protocols, compartmentalized information flows, and created a digital workspace isolated from the main Pentagon systems. Why such extensive security measures? Asked Olivia Patel, one of her chosen analysts, during their first team meeting. Because the best intelligence work happens when analysts can follow evidence wherever it leads, Maya replied, even when that direction might be uncomfortable for some in leadership. It was a carefully crafted answer, true without revealing her actual purpose. Maya was building not just a team, but a fortress, a secure base from which to hunt for the truth behind her parents' deaths, while maintaining the cover of legitimate intelligence work. The Jade Serpent files arrived on her 3rd day, delivered personally by Admiral Hayes. The Admiral was in his 60s now, his hair silver and his face weathered by decades of service, but his eyes remained sharp as they had been when he'd served alongside her father. Everything we have, Hayes said, placing a secure tablet on her desk. Much of it was classified beyond normal channels, accessible only to your father's special task force. Maya nodded. already feeling the weight of what lay ahead. "Thank you, Admiral. I know this required considerable political capital." "Worth every ounce," Hayes replied. "Your father saved my career when I was wrongly implicated in a leak. Your mother taught my daughter to shoot." His expression grew serious. "When they died, I couldn't shake the feeling that we'd missed something important. The investigation was too quick, too neat, but I couldn't get traction with my concerns." "You're not alone in that," Maya said. "General Harrington had similar suspicions. Harrington's solid. One of the few I'd trust completely in this matter." Hayes glanced at the tablet. "What do you know about Jade Serpent so far?" "Only what was in the unclassified summary. A counterintelligence operation targeting suspected high-level penetration within the U.S. intelligence community. Started 18 months before my parents' deaths, officially listed as inconclusive in my father's final report." Hayes nodded. "The official record is deliberately vague. What it doesn't say is that your father had identified a pattern suggesting not one mole, but a network of penetration agents placed in critical intelligence positions over a period of decades." Maya felt her pulse quicken. This aligned with her own suspicions but went further than she'd been able to confirm independently. "A network implies coordination," she said. "A foreign intelligence service with extraordinary patience and resources." That was your father's assessment. He believed we were dealing with a Chinese deep-cover operation. Assets placed years or even decades earlier in positions where they could now access critical intelligence. Some may have been recruited as students, others compromised mid-career. And he was getting close to exposing them. Hayes' expression was grim. 3 weeks before the crash, he told me he had narrowed his list of suspects to fewer than 10 individuals. 2 weeks before, he said he had compelling evidence against at least 3. 1 week before, he requested an urgent meeting with the Director of National Intelligence. That meeting never happened. The timeline sent a chill through Maya. Her parents had died 3 days before that scheduled meeting. "Did he share the names with you?" "Number." He was compartmentalizing the information. Standard procedure for a counterintelligence operation of this sensitivity. "Only your mother knew the complete picture." Hayes paused. "But the tablet contains his working files. If the names are anywhere, they're in there." After Hayes left, Maya spent hours reviewing the Jade Serpent files, her analytical mind processing the information with methodical precision. Her father's investigative approach was familiar. The same structured analysis, the same attention to subtle patterns that she had inherited. She could almost hear his voice in the notes, explaining connections that others had missed. By midnight, she had constructed a timeline of the operation and identified several gaps in the documentation, places where her father had clearly withheld critical information from the official record. These gaps centered around 3 time periods, each corresponding to major intelligence operations involving China. Maya created a secure note with her initial findings. 3 focal points: Operation Blue Horizon 2016, Shanghai Diplomatic Crisis 2018, Quantum Security Initiative 2019. Each represents a significant intelligence failure or compromise involving China. Father suspected connection between these events. Penetration agents activated for specific purposes. Names missing from record, but methodology suggests focus on individuals with access to all 3 operations. She was about to continue when her secure phone buzzed. A message from General Harrington. "Unexpected visitor. Pentagon main entrance. Coming to you now." 20 minutes later, Maya's office door opened to reveal Harrington escorting a woman in her early 60s, elegantly dressed with silver-streaked dark hair. Something about her bearing immediately put Maya on alert. The way she scanned the room, the way she moved with deliberate economy. "Maya Chen," the woman said, her voice carrying a hint of an accent Maya couldn't immediately place. "You look so much like your mother." Maya rose from her desk, instinctively on guard. "You knew my mother? She saved my life in Prague, 1989. The woman extended her hand. "Mei Lin, former MSS. Maya froze. "MSS Ministry of State Security. Chinese Intelligence." "Don't worry," Harrington said quickly. "Ms. Lin defected 25 years ago. She's been one of our most valuable consultants on Chinese intelligence operations ever since. She worked with your parents on several joint operations." Maya shook the offered hand, her mind racing. "Why are you here, Ms. Lin?" "Because Jade Serpent has been reactivated," Lin said simply. "And because I believe I know who killed your parents." Maya felt as if the air had been sucked from the room. "Explain." Lin glanced at Harrington, who nodded and closed the door. 3 days ago, one of my sources in Beijing reported unusual activity in the MSS Archives Division. Files being pulled related to an operation from the early 1990s codenamed Sleeping Dragon. This was a long-term penetration strategy, initiated during a period when many Chinese students were studying at American universities. The same time frame my father was investigating, Maya noted. Exactly. When I heard about this activity, I contacted Admiral Hayes. He told me you had reopened Jade Serpent. Lin's expression grew serious. The original Sleeping Dragon placed over 20 deep-cover agents in positions throughout the American government and military. Most were genuine students who were recruited, but a few were MSS officers using student cover. And you believe my father had identified some of them? I know he had, Lin confirmed, because I helped him. Your mother and I had maintained contact after my defection. When your father began Jade Serpent, she reached out to me for historical context on MSS operations from that period. Did you see his final list? Maya asked, hardly daring to hope. No, but I know who compiled it for him. Lin looked directly at Maya, a data analyst at the National Security Agency named Victor Harris. Harris specialized in pattern analysis across decades of signals intelligence. Your father tasked him with identifying correlations between suspected intelligence breaches and specific individuals' access patterns. Maya exchanged glances with Harrington. Where is Harris now? That's the problem, Harrington said. He resigned from the NSA 3 weeks after your parents' deaths, completely dropped off the grid. No financial transactions, no digital footprint. We've been trying to locate him since Ms. Lin brought this to our attention. Maya's analytical mind immediately began processing this new information. If Harris compiled the list for my father, he would have known exactly which high-level officials were compromised. That makes him either a crucial witness or one of the network himself, Lin finished. Using his position to identify which of his fellow agents had been compromised while appearing to help your father. We need to find him, Maya said decisively. And we need to reconstruct my father's investigation from scratch. The hunt for Victor Harris became Maya's obsession over the next 2 weeks. She leveraged every resource her new position provided, analyzing patterns and intelligence failures, cross-referencing personnel records, and quietly interviewing former colleagues of both Harris and her father. Her team proved invaluable, each bringing unique skills to the investigation. Olivia Patel had an extraordinary memory for details that others missed. Jason Kim possessed an intuitive understanding of data visualization that revealed patterns in seemingly unrelated events. Thomas Wilson, a former military intelligence officer, contributed a strategic perspective that helped anticipate their target's potential moves. What they discovered painted a disturbing picture. Victor Harris hadn't simply disappeared. He had been systematically erased, personnel records altered, official photographs removed from security databases, even his academic credentials questioned by administrative reviews that occurred months after his disappearance. Someone's trying to make it look like he never existed, Wilson observed during one late-night strategy session. Not someone, Maya corrected. The network. They're protecting themselves by eliminating connections to Harris. Which means he's either dead or, Patel began. Or he's one of them, Maya finished. And they extracted him when his cover was at risk. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. During a routine review of NSA badge access logs, Kim discovered an anomaly. Harris's badge was used to enter the NSA headquarters 3 times after his official resignation date, he reported, highlighting the data points on his screen, each time between 2 o'clock and 4 a.m. Someone using his credentials, Maya concluded. Probably to access or alter records he'd compiled for my father. But here's the interesting part, Kim continued. On the 3rd occasion, there was a security alert. The system flagged simultaneous use of Harris's badge at 2 different entry points. Maya leaned forward. A technical glitch? That's how it was logged. But what if it wasn't? Kim brought up another screen showing security camera timestamps. What if Harris was actually there, using his own badge while someone else was also using a cloned version. Two people, both using Harris's credentials, accessing the building at the same time, Maya said, the implications immediately clear. Harris came back for something important enough to risk exposure. And someone else was there who shouldn't have been, Wilson added. Someone who might have confronted him. Maya made a decision. We need those security camera archives. If Harris was physically present that night, we need to see where he went and who else was there. Accessing the NSA's internal security footage required General Harrington's direct intervention, but 3 days later, Maya's team was reviewing the grainy footage from the night in question. The cameras had captured a man matching Harris's description entering the building at 2:17 a.m., using his badge at the main entrance, while simultaneously someone used his credentials at a service entrance on the opposite side of the facility. Follow both of them, Maya instructed. Her team tracked the badge signals through the building, watching as Harris made his way to a secure data center, while the unknown second person moved through back corridors toward the same location. The footage showed Harris accessing a terminal, downloading files to a portable device. He was nearly finished when the second figure appeared in the doorway behind him, a tall man in a maintenance uniform, his face carefully angled away from the cameras. He knows where the blind spots are, Wilson noted. Look how he moves. On screen, Harris suddenly tensed, aware of the presence behind him. He turned, his expression changing from surprise to recognition. No audio accompanied the footage, but it was clear the two men knew each other. A brief conversation ensued before the maintenance worker gestured toward the exit. Harris nodded, pocketing his device and following the man out. That's the last visual we have of either of them, Kim said as the footage ended. They entered a corridor with non-functional cameras. No, Maya said suddenly, her eyes fixed on a different monitor. That's not the last visual. She pointed to a parking garage camera that had captured a partial image of a vehicle leaving the facility 20 minutes later. Though the license plate was obscured, the make and model were identifiable, a black Audi sedan. Find that car, Maya ordered. Check every traffic camera within 20 miles of the NSA headquarters for that night. Cross-reference with any similar vehicles registered to government employees or contractors. The search took days but eventually yielded results. The Audi had been captured by 3 different traffic cameras, traveling north toward Delaware. Its license plate, visible in one frame, was registered to a shell company that, after extensive investigation, Maya's team traced to a property management firm with connections to a senior intelligence official, Deputy Director Lawrence Sullivan of the Defense Intelligence Agency. Sullivan had been her father's colleague. They had served together on multiple task forces, worked joint operations in Southeast Asia, even vacationed together with their families when Maya was a child. He had attended her parents' funeral, offered condolences, promised to look after her if she ever needed anything. And he had access to all 3 operations her father had identified as compromised. Maya stared at Sullivan's official photograph, memories flooding back of the man who had given her a chess set for her 16th birthday, who had called her Little Dragon because of her fierce concentration when solving puzzles her father created. It can't be him, she whispered, though the evidence was mounting. Further investigation revealed troubling patterns. Sullivan had traveled to Hong Kong at least twice a year for the past 15 years, ostensibly for conferences or official meetings. Financial analysis showed unexplained deposits to offshore accounts following several major intelligence breaches, and most damning of all, he had been the one to insist on leading the investigation into her parents' plane crash, producing a conclusive report in record time. The question isn't whether Sullivan is involved, Wilson said grimly during their final review of the evidence. It's whether he acted alone in having your parents killed. Maya had reached the same conclusion, but hearing it stated so bluntly brought a cold clarity to her thoughts. For 5 years she had hunted a shadow, a nameless entity responsible for her parents' deaths. Now that shadow had a face, one she had known and trusted. The betrayal cut deep, but with it came resolve. Sullivan wasn't just any traitor. He was among the most senior intelligence officials in the country, with access to America's most sensitive secrets and the power to bury any investigation that threatened him. We need absolute proof, Maya told her team. And we need to move carefully. If Sullivan realizes we're onto him, he'll disappear, or worse, he'll eliminate any remaining evidence, including us. She developed a strategy worthy of her father's legacy. Instead of confronting Sullivan directly or taking their suspicions to higher authorities who might warn him, Maya created an elaborate intelligence trap. She planted information suggesting that Victor Harris had resurfaced in Canada with documents from Jade Serpent, then carefully monitored who accessed this false intelligence and what actions followed. Sullivan took the bait immediately. Within hours of the false information entering the system, he had accessed the report, made several secure calls, and requested leave for personal reasons. Surveillance teams tracked him to a private airfield where a chartered jet waited to take him to Toronto. As Sullivan's car approached the airfield, it was intercepted by a security team led by Admiral Hayes himself. The evidence found in Sullivan's possession was damning. A go bag containing multiple passports, encrypted communications devices, and most significantly, a thumb drive with files detailing the entire Sleeping Dragon network, including his own recruitment 30 years earlier as a promising young intelligence officer with money problems and a gambling addiction. Maya watched the arrest via secure video feed from her Pentagon office, her expression unreadable. When it was over, Harrington called with confirmation. "We got him, Maya. Clean arrest, all evidence secured. He's already talking, trying to cut a deal. Has he confessed to my parents' deaths?" A pause. "Yes. He claims it wasn't supposed to happen that way. Just mechanical sabotage, to delay them, prevent the meeting with the DNI. But something went wrong." Maya closed her eyes briefly, absorbing the confirmation of what she had already known in her heart. There will be others in the network, already identified from his files. Operations are underway to apprehend them all. Harrington's voice softened. "Your parents would be proud, Maya. You finished what they started." After the call ended, Maya sat alone in her office looking at the photograph of her parents that now stood openly on her desk. For 5 years, she had lived in the shadows, driven by the need to uncover the truth. Now that truth had been revealed, but it brought no joy, only a somber sense of justice and the weight of legacy fulfilled. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. She looked up to see a 4-star general she recognized immediately. General Alexander Marcus, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the highest-ranking military officer in the United States. Maya stood immediately. "General Marcus, sir. I wasn't informed you were coming." Marcus entered, closing the door behind him. He was in his early 60s, with the weathered face of someone who had seen combat across multiple conflicts, but his eyes were sharp and evaluating as they took in Maya's office, the evidence boards, the secure terminals. "I wanted this to be unofficial, Miss Chen." He glanced at the photo on her desk. "Or should I say, Nightingale?" Maya maintained her composure. "Maya is fine, sir." Marcus nodded, then did something unexpected. He came to attention and offered a formal salute. "On behalf of the Joint Chiefs and a grateful nation, I want to acknowledge the extraordinary service you've rendered in exposing a decades-long penetration of our intelligence community." Maya was momentarily speechless. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs was saluting her, a civilian analyst. "Sir, The salute isn't just for you," Marcus continued, lowering his hand. "It's for Michael and Elizabeth, too. They were my friends. What happened to them was a betrayal of everything we stand for. What you've done honors their memory and secures our nation's future." Maya felt emotion threatening to break through her carefully maintained control. "Thank you, sir." "There's more," Marcus said, taking a seat across from her desk. "With Sullivan's network exposed, we're conducting a complete security review of all sensitive operations. We need someone who understands this threat, someone with the analytical skills to identify vulnerabilities and the strategic vision to prevent future penetrations." He looked directly at Maya. "I'm offering you the position of Special Advisor to the Joint Chiefs on Counterintelligence Strategy, directly reporting to me, with a mandate to rebuild our protective systems from the ground up." It was an extraordinary offer, a position of enormous influence and responsibility, the chance to reshape America's counterintelligence approach at the highest level, the kind of role her father might have filled had he lived. "May I ask why me, sir? There are more experienced counterintelligence specialists available." "Experience isn't what we need right now," Marcus replied. "We need fresh thinking, analytical brilliance, and someone who understands both the technical and human elements of intelligence work. Someone who can see patterns others miss." He paused. "Someone like Michael Chen's daughter." Maya considered the offer carefully. For years, she had defined herself in relation to her parents, first trying to follow in their footsteps, then trying to distance herself from their legacy, finally embracing their methods to solve the mystery of their deaths. Now she was being offered the chance to define her own path while honoring everything they had taught her. "I accept, General Marcus. On one condition. Name it. I keep my current team. They've proven themselves exceptional under pressure, and I trust them completely." Marcus smiled. "Already arranged. Harrington speaks highly of all of them." He stood, extending his hand. "Welcome aboard, Miss Chen. We have a lot of work to do." As Marcus left her office, Maya turned once more to the photograph of her parents. The daughter of the strategist and the ghost had emerged from the shadows and found her own place in the light. Sullivan's betrayal had taught her the cost of trust misplaced, but her team's loyalty had shown her the value of trust earned through respect and shared purpose. She had avenged her parents and protected her country. Now she would build something that would outlast all of them, a counterintelligence framework designed to prevent others from suffering what her family had endured. It was a legacy worthy of the Chen name, but more importantly, it was a future she had chosen for herself. Maya Chen, no longer the invisible analyst, no longer just her parents' daughter, but a strategist and guardian in her own right, picked up her secure phone and called her team. They had work to do. 3 years after exposing Deputy Director Sullivan, Maya Chen stood before a graduating class of intelligence analysts at the newly established Center for Strategic Intelligence. The auditorium was filled with the next generation of America's intelligence community, bright, eager faces ready to apply their skills in service to their country. As the keynote speaker, Maya had been asked to share insights from her remarkable career trajectory. "Intelligence work isn't about dramatic revelations or heroic moments," Maya told the assembled graduates. "It's about patience, persistence, the willingness to follow evidence wherever it leads, even when that path challenges everything you thought you knew." In the front row sat General Marcus, now in his final year as chairman of the Joint Chiefs. Beside him were Olivia Patel, Jason Kim, and Thomas Wilson, Maya's original team, now directors of their own specialized intelligence units. In the 3 years since Sullivan's arrest and subsequent conviction for espionage and conspiracy to commit murder, they had helped Maya implement a comprehensive overhaul of America's counterintelligence systems. "The most dangerous threats aren't always the most visible," Maya continued. "Sometimes they're hidden in plain sight, protected by assumptions, overlooked because they don't fit our preconceptions about what danger looks like." She didn't need to mention Sullivan explicitly. His case had become required study for everyone in the intelligence community, a cautionary tale about the vulnerability of even the most secure systems to human compromise. 32 members of his network had been identified and arrested, representing one of the most significant counterintelligence operations in American history. "Your greatest asset isn't your access to information or your analytical tools," Maya told the graduates. "It's your perspective, your unique way of seeing connections that others miss. Don't silence that voice when it tells you something doesn't add up, even if contradicts conventional wisdom or challenges authority." After the ceremony, Maya found herself surrounded by graduates eager to speak with the woman whose methods had revolutionized the intelligence community's approach to internal security. She answered their questions patiently, recognizing in many of them the same dedication and analytical curiosity that had driven her own career. "Miss Chen," one young woman asked, "is it true that you identified Sullivan's network while working as a basic analyst, before anyone knew your background?" Maya smiled. "I had help. A team of exceptional analysts who weren't afraid to question established narratives. That's the lesson I hope you'll take from my experience. No matter your position or title, your perspective matters. The patterns you see matter." As the crowd dispersed, General Marcus approached with a distinguished-looking man in his 60s, CIA Director William Everett. "Maya," Marcus said warmly. "Excellent speech. These kids will be quoting you for years." "Let's hope they remember the substance, not just the sound bites," Maya replied with a smile. "Director Everett wanted to discuss the Singapore situation with you," Marcus said, his tone shifting to business. "Given your regional expertise," Maya nodded, immediately alert. The Singapore situation was a developing crisis involving suspected Chinese intelligence operations targeting American quantum computing research. She had been monitoring it closely, recognizing patterns similar to those her father had documented years earlier. "Why don't we continue this discussion in private?" Everett suggested. 20 minutes later, they were seated in a secure conference room at the center, reviewing intelligence reports on a specialized tablet. "Our station chief in Singapore has identified 3 potential leak sources," Everett explained, "but can't determine which is the actual penetration point. The technology involved is so specialized that only a handful of people understand it well enough to compromise it effectively." Maya studied the data, her analytical mind immediately recognizing a familiar pattern. "You're looking at this wrong," she said. "It's not one leak source, it's all 3. Working in coordination but with limited knowledge of each other." Everett looked skeptical. "That's an unusually complex operation. The chances of maintaining operational security across 3 simultaneous penetrations would be challenging for most intelligence services," Maya acknowledged. "But this follows the same cellular structure my father documented in the original Sleeping Dragon network. Each agent operates independently, receives compartmentalized instructions, never meets the others. The only communication is through dead drops and encoded signals that appear completely innocent." She manipulated the data on the tablet, rearranging information flows to demonstrate her theory. "Look at the timing patterns. Each breach occurs exactly 17 days after a specific external trigger event. Different triggers for each source, but the same 17-day delay." Marcus leaned forward, studying her analysis. 17 days. Why that specific time frame? "Because it's precisely long enough to avoid obvious correlation, but short enough to ensure the intelligence remains valuable," Maya explained. "It's elegant, actually, and it bears the hallmark of MSS Section 8, their technology targeting division." Everett exchanged glances with Marcus. "How do you suggest we proceed?" "Don't try to catch all 3 at once," Maya said decisively. "Focus on the least valuable asset first, turn them if possible. Feed controlled information through them to identify the handler, while monitoring the other 2 sources. Then roll up the entire network once we've mapped the complete communication structure." The operation proceeded exactly as Maya had outlined. Within 6 weeks, all 3 penetration agents had been identified, their handler captured during an exchange in Malaysia, and a comprehensive understanding of the network's communication protocols established. The Singapore quantum research continued uncompromised, with the Chinese unaware that their entire operation had been neutralized. Following this success, Maya found herself increasingly called upon to consult on the most sensitive counterintelligence matters across multiple agencies. Her perspective, combining her father's strategic vision with her mother's attention to human psychology and her own data-driven analytical approach, proved invaluable in identifying and neutralizing threats that defied conventional detection. "You've become a legend in your own right," Admiral Hayes told her during a rare social dinner at his Georgetown home. Now retired, Hayes had remained a trusted mentor and friend. "The analysts coming up now don't talk about you as Michael and Elizabeth's daughter anymore. They talk about the Chen method." Maya smiled, though the observation triggered mixed emotions. "I'm not sure there is a Chen method. I just approach problems the way my parents taught me. Looking for patterns, questioning assumptions, considering the human element behind the data." "That's exactly what the Chen method is," Hayes replied with a chuckle. "And it's revolutionizing how we train the next generation of analysts. The curriculum at the center is now built around your analytical framework." "Speaking of the center," Maya said, changing the subject, "I've been thinking about the director position that's opening up next year. I'd like to recommend Olivia for it." Hayes raised an eyebrow. "Not interested yourself? It's widely assumed you're the natural choice." Maya shook her head. "I'm more valuable in the field, working active cases. Olivia has a gift for teaching, for helping others develop their analytical skills. She'd transform the center into something truly exceptional." "Always thinking 3 moves ahead," Hayes observed. "Your father would approve." After dinner, Maya walked through the quiet Georgetown streets, reflecting on how much had changed in the years since she'd first taken that analyst position at the Pentagon. She had entered as a shadow, deliberately unremarkable, driven by a singular purpose. Now she moved through the intelligence community as a recognized expert, her opinions sought on the most critical national security matters, her methods taught to every new analyst. Yet something was missing. The resolution of her parents' case had brought justice, but not complete closure. Sullivan's network had been dismantled, but the larger question remained: what had her parents discovered that was worth killing them for? Sullivan had claimed he was merely following orders, that the decision to eliminate Michael and Elizabeth Chen had come from higher up in the Chinese intelligence hierarchy. Maya had never stopped investigating, using her expanded access to quietly pursue leads during her official duties. 3 years of patient work had yielded a name: General Zhao Wei, head of MSS Department 6 during the period when her parents were killed, now retired, but still influential in Chinese intelligence circles. Her secure phone buzzed with a message from Mei Lin, the former MSS officer who had become an invaluable ally. Package delivered. Coordinates confirmed. Maya quickened her pace. The package was information Lin had been gathering about Zhao's current activities. Specifically, his plans to attend an international security conference in Geneva the following month. If the intelligence was accurate, it represented Maya's first opportunity to get close to the man who had likely ordered her parents' deaths. Back in her apartment, no longer the small Arlington unit, but a spacious Georgetown townhouse filled with books and art collected during her global operations, Maya accessed a secure terminal hidden in her study. Lin's information was comprehensive. Zhao's travel itinerary, security arrangements, even his scheduled meetings during the conference. Maya studied the intelligence with professional detachment, separating her personal feelings from her analytical assessment. Confronting Zhao directly would be both dangerous and potentially counterproductive. What she needed wasn't confrontation, but confirmation. Irrefutable evidence that he had ordered the operation against her parents, and more importantly, why. She developed a plan that combined her father's strategic brilliance with her mother's talent for subtle manipulation. It would require perfect timing, multiple layers of deception, and extraordinary patience. But if successful, it would yield the answers she had sought for 8 years. The Geneva International Security Conference drew hundreds of participants from around the world: intelligence officials, military leaders, security experts, and diplomatic representatives. Maya attended as part of the American delegation, ostensibly there to present on emerging cybersecurity threats. Her actual purpose remained known only to a select few: General Marcus, her core team, and Mei Lin, who had traveled separately to provide on-site support. Zhao arrived on the second day of the conference, accompanied by a security detail and several junior officials. At 72, he remained imposing, tall for a Chinese man of his generation, with a military bearing and penetrating eyes that surveyed each room he entered with calculating precision. Maya observed him from a distance, never approaching directly, allowing others to draw his attention while she mapped his movements, identified his routines, and waited for the perfect moment to implement her strategy. That moment came during a reception at the lakeside villa of a Swiss banking executive. Mei Lin, posing as a cultural attaché from Singapore, engaged one of Zhao's junior aides in conversation, subtly steering him toward the topic of historical intelligence operations. Maya, positioned nearby, monitored the exchange while appearing absorbed in a discussion with European security officials. "The old methods still have much to teach us," Lin was saying. "The patience of previous generations, the commitment to long-term operations. Like Sleeping Dragon, 30 years of careful placement before activation." The aide smiled politely. "I'm not familiar with that operation." "No?" "It's widely studied now, after the American exposure, though they never understood the full scope, of course. Or why certain obstacles needed to be removed." Maya saw the moment of recognition in the aide's eyes, the quick glance toward Zhao across the room, the subtle tension in his posture. Lin had baited the hook perfectly. Now it was time for Maya to set it. She excused herself from her conversation and moved casually toward the bar, positioning herself just behind Zhao, who was speaking with a Russian security official. As she ordered a mineral water, she deliberately checked her watch, her father's platinum timepiece, which she had worn openly since claiming her identity. Zhao's aide approached him, whispered something in his ear. Zhao turned, his eyes finding Maya, lingering on the watch. Recognition flickered across his face. Not of Maya personally, but of the watch, of its significance. Their eyes met briefly. Maya allowed a small, knowing smile to cross her lips before turning away, moving unhurriedly toward the terrace doors. The message had been delivered. I know who you are. I know what you did. Phase 1 complete. Over the next 2 days, Maya implemented the subsequent phases of her strategy, never directly approaching Zhao, but ensuring she was visible at key moments, always wearing her father's watch prominently. Mei Lin continued her subtle psychological operation, dropping carefully crafted comments about legacy, about operations coming full circle, about children completing their parents' unfinished business. By the final day of the conference, Zhao was visibly unsettled. His security detail had been doubled, his scheduled appearances altered. He was reacting exactly as Maya had anticipated, like a man who recognized a threat but couldn't identify its precise nature or source. The culmination came during the closing reception. Maya arranged to be seated at a table adjacent to Zhao's during dinner, close enough for conversation but separated enough to maintain plausible deniability about any intentional contact. As coffee was served, Maya received a pre-arranged call on her secure phone. She answered in Mandarin, loud enough for Zhao to overhear. Yes, I've confirmed visual, she said. The Jade Serpent files are secure. Full activation timeline remains as scheduled. She ended the call, aware that Zhao was watching her intently. Jade Serpent had been her father's operation code name, never publicly disclosed. Using it now was a calculated risk, but one designed to provoke a specific reaction. It worked. After dinner, as guests mingled for final conversations, Zhao approached her directly. Ms. Chen, he said in perfect English, I don't believe we've been formally introduced. General Zhao Wei. Maya turned to him with a polite smile. General, your reputation precedes you, as does yours. The daughter who follows in distinguished footsteps. His eyes moved to her watch. A family heirloom? My father's, Maya confirmed. He valued precision above all things, as all good intelligence officers must. Zhao's expression remained pleasant, but his eyes had hardened. I knew your parents briefly. A professional encounter many years ago. I'm aware, Maya said calmly. A very final encounter, wasn't it? The pleasant mask slipped for just a moment. Surprise, then calculation in his eyes. I'm not sure I understand your meaning. I think you do, General. Maya maintained her composure, though her heart raced. What I don't understand is why. What did they discover that was worth killing for? What was in the Jade Serpent files that couldn't be allowed to come to light? Zhao studied her for a long moment, then glanced around to ensure they weren't overheard. Your parents were exceptional operators. Your father, especially, saw patterns where others saw only random events. It made him dangerous. Dangerous to whom? To a carefully constructed strategy decades in the making. Zhao's voice had dropped to near a whisper. China plays the long game, Miss Chen. Always. What your father discovered wasn't just a network of agents. It was the first phase of a multi-generational plan to reshape the balance of power in the Pacific. Maya felt a chill. Sleeping Dragon was just the beginning. The first generation, Zhao confirmed. There are others, placed even more carefully, their connections untraceable by conventional means. Your father found the pattern because he thought like us. Across decades, not election cycles. And now? Zhao smiled thinly. Now I am retired, watching a new generation make the same mistakes, including underestimating the daughter as they underestimated the father. He leaned closer. They should have killed you, too. I advised it at the time. But Sullivan insisted you were no threat without your parents' guidance. A miscalculation. Maya said softly. Indeed. Zhao straightened. This conversation never happened, Miss Chen. But know this. What your parents discovered has already evolved beyond recognition. The network you exposed was obsolete, a sacrifice we were prepared to make. The true operation continues. With that cryptic warning, he nodded politely and walked away, rejoining his delegation as if they had exchanged nothing more than diplomatic pleasantries. Maya remained outwardly calm, though her mind was racing with the implications of what she'd just learned. Zhao had not only confirmed his role in her parents' deaths, but revealed something far more significant. Their discovery had been merely the surface of a deeper, more complex Chinese intelligence operation that remained active. She needed to get this information to General Marcus immediately. If Zhao was telling the truth, the intelligence community needed to completely reassess their understanding of Chinese long-term strategy. But first, she had achieved what she'd sought for 8 years: confirmation of who had ordered her parents' deaths and why. The knowledge brought no joy, only a somber understanding of the true scope of what her parents had discovered and died to protect. 2 days later, Maya sat in General Marcus's secure Pentagon office, having delivered a comprehensive briefing on her encounter with Zhao and its implications. "If he's telling the truth, we're facing a penetration effort, unlike anything we've encountered," Marcus said gravely. "Multi-generational, strategically patient, potentially involving agents who don't even know they're being positioned for future activation. That's consistent with what my father documented in the Jade Serpent files," Maya confirmed. He wasn't just tracking active agents. He was identifying patterns that suggested long-term positioning of potential assets. Children of diplomats sent to specific schools, scholarship programs targeting particular skill sets, corporate recruitment initiatives focused on specific government-adjacent industries. "The question is how we counter something this diffuse and long-term," Marcus mused. "Our systems are designed to detect current threats, not potential ones that might activate a decade from now." Maya had anticipated this question. "We need to think like they do, strategically, across generations. I've developed a framework for identifying these patterns, building on my father's original methodology, but incorporating new analytical approaches and technological tools." She presented a comprehensive plan, a new division within the intelligence community focused exclusively on long-term strategic counterintelligence, combining advanced pattern recognition algorithms with human analytical expertise, designed to identify potential penetration vectors before they activated. "This is ambitious," Marcus said after reviewing her proposal. "It would require cooperation across multiple agencies, significant resources, and a fundamental shift in how we approach counterintelligence." "It's necessary," Maya replied simply. "My parents saw this threat coming 8 years ago. We've lost valuable time already." Marcus studied her thoughtfully. "You've come a long way from the analyst hiding in plain sight, Maya. This proposal would put you at the center of our most sensitive counterintelligence efforts, with a mandate that crosses all traditional agency boundaries." "I'm not proposing this for personal advancement," Maya clarified. "I'm proposing it because it's what the situation demands. If someone else is better qualified to lead it, I'll support them fully." Marcus smiled. "Always your parents' daughter, putting the mission before ego." He closed the file decisively. "I'll take this to the president tomorrow. With recent events in the South China Sea, he's particularly receptive to new approaches on China. I believe he'll approve it." 2 weeks later, Maya stood in the Oval Office as the president signed the executive order establishing the Strategic Counterintelligence Initiative. As its founding director, she would report directly to the National Security Council, with authority to draw resources and personnel from across the intelligence community. "The Chen Institute," the president said, using the informal name that had already taken hold among those aware of the initiative, "has a nice ring to it." Maya thought of her parents, their dedication, their sacrifice, their unwavering commitment to protecting their country. "It's a legacy I'm honored to continue, Mr. President." As she left the White House that day, Maya felt a sense of completion that had eluded her for 8 years. She had not only avenged her parents, but transformed their unfinished work into something that would protect the nation for generations to come. The diversity hire, who had once been dismissed and overlooked, now stood at the forefront of America's intelligence community, her methods and insights reshaping how the nation identified and countered its most sophisticated adversaries. That evening, she gathered with her original team, Patel, Kim, and Wilson, in her Georgetown home, sharing a quiet celebration of how far they had come and the challenges that lay ahead. To Michael and Elizabeth, Wilson proposed a toast, whose legacy lives on in ways they could never have imagined. "And to Maya," Patel added, "who showed us all that sometimes the most powerful intelligence asset is the person everyone underestimates." Maya raised her glass, thinking of that day 3 years ago when a 4-star general had walked into her office and saluted her. From invisible analyst to intelligence director, from a daughter seeking justice to a strategist protecting her nation's future. Her journey had come full circle. To legacy, she said simply. Not just what we inherit, but what we build. The Chin Institute would become her life's work, a fitting monument to her parents' sacrifice and a testament to her own determination. The daughter of the strategist and the ghost had emerged from their shadow to cast a light of her own, illuminating threats others couldn't see and protecting secrets too valuable to lose. And somewhere, watching from beyond, Michael and Elizabeth Chen would be proud of the woman their daughter had become. Not because she had followed their path, but because she had forged her own. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.